I'm Andrew, and welcome back to Community Design Review, where we take a look at some of this week's best designs from the custommagic subreddit. Our shoutout this week is Liliana Oathkeeper. She costs 2 white black for a planeswalker, Liliana, with 4 loyalty, and she has 4 abilities. The first is a passive that says you may gain or lose life to activate Liliana's loyalty abilities rather than adding or removing loyalty counters from her. Interesting. So you could ultimate her immediately by paying life rather than by paying loyalty. Okay. +1 loyalty. Up to 1 target creature gets +2/+2 or -2/-2 until your next turn. Okay, that's kind of cool. It's balancing black and white onto one effect. White would give +2/+2 and black would give -2/-2. So you're getting both colors in that ability. -3, return to the battlefield target creature card in your graveyard that was put there this turn. Excellently worded, that ability. That can be a tricky trap to fall into, but that ability is worded correctly, so good job. And -6, exile target non-land permanent. Wow, okay, so you could drop her turn 5, pay 6 life, and instantly exile anything. Or if the only thing that's threatening her has 2 toughness, you can kill that with the +1. Every turn after that, I mean, you can kill another thing as long as you have the life. So I feel like this is ridiculously powerful in like a vampire's life gain deck. I could definitely see it going up to 6 mana, but 6 life is a lot, so maybe it's fine. But either way, cool design. Our first meme card this week is Unambiguous Tudor. It costs 2 and hybrid white-blue for a 3/2 legendary creature, Dragon Merfolk. It has flash, flying, and if an effect would cause a player to open a booster pack, that player reveals a card from the same set they own from outside the game and put it into their hand instead. Magic doesn't use his or her anymore, and they just use they. Okay, and this is a reference to the professor at Tolarian Community College always telling people to
buy singles.
Of course, the card doesn't have too many applications. There's only a couple cards I can think of that make you open a pack, Booster Tutor and Summon the Pack. I mean, you could use Booster Tutor as a 1-mana card to tutor any card into your hand, which is pretty good. Actually, I guess Summon the Pack gets worse. So you only want Booster Tutor with this card? But it is a cool combo. I could see definitely putting this into an uncube, although it only combos with 1 card. It combos very well with it. So it could be really fun. I really like this card. It's a fun effect. Our second meme card this week is Punching Power. It costs 1 red for an enchantment, and it says all damage counts as combat damage. Okay, so this is an interesting effect. So there are some cards that care about whenever you deal combat damage to a player. But, of course, other things like Lightning Bolt don't count for that. Oh, you could also use it with your commander, because commander damage only works with your commander's combat damage. So if you have a commander that deals direct damage to a player, that's not going to add to the commander damage total. But if you have Punching Power out, oh yeah, you better believe it will. This is a really cool effect, very niche, but in the right deck, it could really help out. And our last meme card for the week is Scapegoat. It costs 8 white. It's a sorcery that says each player secretly votes for a player. If a single player has the most votes, that player loses the game. And the flavor text is telling you that in a commander game, the point of this card is to just get rid of the player that's making the game no fun. It needs a clause that says each player reveals their votes at the same time. But this is kind of a cool design. I mean, you could always just choose not to play with that person again in the future, but it is kind of nice to have an in-Magic way to deal with the problem. And since I play Zerg Prison, I'm sure I'm fine. And moving on to our black border cards for the week, number 5 is One Man's Trash. It costs 1 red for an enchantment. Okay, this is another Punching Power type card. It has each artifact you control is a treasure. That should be capitalized because it's a subtype, in addition to its other types, and has tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Okay, this person's probably been designing cards for a while, because they still put to your mana pool at the end, and I think it was with M20 that Wizards stopped doing that to sort of simplify the concept, because the mana pool really confuses new players. So now it just says add 1 mana of any color. As for the efficacy of this effect, I don't know. How are you going to use this? I mean, you can use it to turn all of your other like artifact tokens into treasures. If I have a bunch of clues, I'd rather sacrifice them to draw cards than to get mana. If I have creatures, well, since they have to tap to sacrifice, they don't have haste, and so I'm going to have to wait a full turn cycle to get my mana back out of them, and I'm spending a card to make those anyway. I'm not saying that there's not a way to use this. I'm pretty sure KCI could find a way to break this card, or actually probably find several ways. But I don't know offhand what it's useful for, but it is kind of a cool idea thematically. Our number 4 card for this week is Particle Accelerator. It costs 3 for a legendary artifact that says whenever you cycle a card, if it's the first card you've cycled this turn, gain 3 life. Okay? If it's the third, draw a card. I see where this is going. If it's the 5th, untap all non-land permanents you control. Okay, what's the big effect? If it's the 7th, you take an extra turn after this one. Oh my. Okay. And of course it has cycling. Okay, so here's the problem with this card. First of all, it's very cool. It's a sweet design, cool art, and it's really rewarding you for building heavily into a cycling theme, which I love. But here's the problem. I mean, Amonkhet Standard had a deck with New Perspectives and Shadow of the Grave that just cycled a bazillion cards in one turn. Well, if you're gaining an extra turn, you can do that every turn, because you can just stop once you hit 7 and then move on and start again. And at that point, you're dominating the game, and your opponent's probably never getting another turn. Now, you could just have this in a standard format without New Perspectives, but it still feels very breakable, because if you have a couple of mana dorks, you only need to get to 5 mana with a bunch of 1 mana cyclers, and you can suddenly take an extra turn every turn, because the 5th cycler is going to untap all your non-land permanents. Actually, I guess you only need 1 mana dork for that. While this is a very cool design, it's also very dangerous. And our number 3 today is, oh boy, Asmo is back. She is a 1/2 for black, legendary creature, human wizard. It says tap, sacrifice another creature, create a food token. Food should be capitalized, again, because it is a subtype. And black, tap, sacrifice a food token, counter target triggered ability you control. Okay, so this is really in flavor for her, pun intended. She is the underworld chef, and I believe her story is that she entered into a contract with the Lord of the Pit. I believe she summoned him and then couldn't control him. So in order to keep him from destroying her, she chose to become his cook. But she could never repeat a meal. So every day she was coming up with something new, and she was preparing all sorts of creatures from around the multiverse in different ways for Lord of the Pit. And so this card really showcases that. She sacrifices creatures to make food, and she can counter a triggered ability you control, which the Lord of the Pit type cards are famous for their extremely powerful downside triggered abilities, where if you cannot satiate them, they will destroy you. And so that's sort of the flavor Asmo has here, which is that she's keeping those triggers at bay. So yeah, this is a really cool design based on her lore. She's not going to be able to counter Lord of the Pit's triggered effect every turn by herself, because she has to tap to make the food and then tap to use the food. Still very cool design. Our number 2 today is Mox Sigil. It costs 0 for a legendary artifact, of course. It has Exalted. Whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and tap to add 1 mana of any color. Activate this ability only if a creature you control attacked alone this turn. Interesting. So it's a Mox, with the downside that you must attack alone with a creature for it to work, and that's a pretty big downside. You need to make sure that your creature is going to survive combat, or else you're going to need to throw a creature every turn in order to get it to work. So, like all Mox, this is a hard-to-use mana accelerant, and this is a very cool Mox, especially because it has Exalted to work with its restriction. And our number 1 card for this week is Bipolar Bear. That's funny. It's a 2/2 for 2 mana, hybrid blue-red, blue-red. It's a creature, weird bear, with blue. Bipolar Bear gets +0/+1 until end of turn. Red, Bipolar Bear gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And hybrid blue/red, switch Bipolar Bear's power and toughness until end of turn. Okay, that's really cool. So I think the concept here is you don't play this with both blue and red. You play it in a blue deck or in a red deck, and you just focus on one. And then you have you can use this both as a big beater, if that's what you need, or as a defensive creature. This is a really cool little design. Kind of reminds me of Frostburn Weird. It's funky, I love it. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and don't forget to capitalize your subtypes. We'll be back next Tuesday.